I wanted to take a close look at the Pokemon Unite roster because the game feels awful right now, and I think it's a good way of identifying problems. Now the weird thing is, when I've been looking at recent Pokemon Unite patch notes, my initial reaction is, yo, most of these changes seem really good and it's going to move the game forward, and then the game feels worse than ever. A crazy idea being that it seems like Pokemon Unite was the most balanced at launch, minus Gengar and a couple of launch hiccups, and then it's just kind of gotten progressively further from balance despite having time added in, and there's a lot of reasons for that, which is why I wanted to do the tier list in a different kind of way. Because a Pokemon being S tier doesn't immediately make it unacceptable. There could also be lower tier Pokemon that have unacceptable things in their kit that kind of ruin the state of the game. You know, I think there's such a thing as a balanced S tier like Cinderace, but then even a Pokemon like Charizard, that Unite move just kind of like ruins the game at certain points, and it can ruin the entirety of the match depending on when it's used and how it's used and the team comps and stuff around it. And this kind of like goes deeper than just the Pokemon, because Zapdos, still one of the worst mechanics in all of competitive gaming. And my friend helped me realize that when I did my video, hey, I paid my friend $100 to play Pokemon Unite with me, and he quit and gave me my money back. And then in the comments section, a lot of people were referencing Zapdos. My friend referenced Zapdos. My other friend referenced Zapdos. So it made me realize something. Zapdos has kind of given us all Stockholm Syndrome. That the people that have been playing the game from the start, you just kind of get used to it. Because the devs, they don't want to fix their game. They're happy with the current game state, which also just kind of like makes me lose a lot of hope for the future of Pokemon Unite. Because in the recent dev letter, we've been blown away by the strategies and playstyles that we've watched evolve over time as trainers climb the rank and discover new ways to victory. Nah, this is not it for anyone that's been playing Pokemon Unite at all. Just because something interesting is happening that you didn't expect doesn't mean it's good for your game, and in most cases it's not, or it's just exploiting broken mechanics like Zapdos, which have needed to change from the start, but the devs are choosing to ignore Zapdos. Buddy Barrier, Focus Band, still no nerfs. Comment your problems with the game down below besides the obvious like, oh, teammates suck. Like, there's still a lot of problems with the game, and that's also what makes some of these Pokemon unacceptable, are the ways that they exploit the problems in the game, thus making all the games a lot more unsatisfying. And then it's also just unplayable Pokemon. Like, too much of the roster is just unusable because of power creep, and again, broken game mechanics and other Pokemon just having too little counterplay. So let's kind of like talk how I've built it out so far. Talonflame. Fly is unhealthy, but we've also seen Talonflame at launch. Talonflame at launch, unusable. One of the worst Pokemon in the game. One of the worst states a Pokemon has ever been in the entire history of Pokemon Unite. I'm saying entire history isn't a lot because the game hasn't been out for a year, but like Talonflame, until it got the fly cooldown reduction, the Gale Wings bug fix, and then its attack buff, and also I think some damage added in as well, it was not a good Pokemon. But then, when it's playable, it's just completely unhealthy because it flies in, flame charges away, and it gets a ton of damage for free, gets a ton of objectives secure for free, and there's really not many ways of punishing it. And the thing is, like, while Talonflame is alive, it negates any advantage your team has because it can fly in from across the map out of nowhere, or like the thing is, if you go chase Talonflame, then you're losing power in the objective, you're losing power in the team fight, but Talonflame can come back at any time, steal Zapdos, that's the game. Talonflame's alive, you do not have a 100% chance to victory, and you're kind of stuck in an 80-20, even if you've completely won the team fight. Like, that's the crazy thing. Like, all 5 of your teammates can be alive. You can completely wipe out the enemy team. Talonflame can limp away with 5 health, but you did not win that team fight enough to win the game, because Zapdos is broken, and Talonflame can just kind of swoop in and steal it. But then people are like, well, you shouldn't contest it while Talonflame's alive. But that's just dumb. That shows that something broken inside the game, where you can decisively win a team fight like that, and then you're still at risk of like screwing up. So what happens? You have to recall even though you won, and then have another 5v5? That shouldn't happen, and Talonflame creates that. But also, Talonflame just turns on too early. Level 7. So second jungle clear, comes in, does 60% of someone's health in a gank from across the map. And then can also flame charge away, have no counterplay against it, have no risk whatsoever. And I think that's one thing we're going to identify, that the floors of some of these Pokemon are not low enough, and then the punishability is also way too low. Similar to Charizard. All Charizard has to do is lose most of the game, and then unite at objectives during big team fights, get itself back into the game, and then determine the game at Zapdos. Not fun or healthy for the Charizard player or the game, but yeah, that's kind of it. You fall below half, you use your Unite move, that's a Buddy Barrier, you receive another Buddy Barrier from the Unite move, so that's like the Buddy Barrier problem, making Charizard more unacceptable, and then you're untargetable. And that's another problem that's happened in the game, like with power creep, too much untargetability, too much unstoppability, too much healing, and Charizard kind of has like all of that happen when it goes into its Unite move, and then just gets to fly around and rain all kinds of crazy damage, and then be super safe, and then it lands, does another round of burst from its abilities, and then it can still just kind of like run on you. So like there's, like some Pokemon just have too much of a get out of jail free, and then there's no response to it. So Charizard has gotten super unhealthy, but it's not like the best Pokemon, but its current state is that like if you put a Charizard in the ground, you still haven't won the game, and that's another problem with the game because the comeback mechanics are too aggressive, and it means like if you don't play perfect 140% of the time while ahead, you make one slight little slip up. You hang too close to their tier 2 goal. You try to overextend to deny a little bit too much, or you just have to show up at Dreadnought and Rotom because they're still important, and then one of your Pokemon gets picked, or one of your teammates or two teammates gets picked, enemy team's back in it. So because that's like, yeah, you can choose a Pokemon like Charizard that's really only good with its Unite up in certain situations, but that all lines up with Zapdos, and then doesn't matter how hard you lose, Charizard will eventually just have a good Unite move, and then there's nothing you can do about it for way too long. So reduce the time on the Unite move, fix the game, I don't know what else to say. And then there's unplayable Pokemon. This is also what I mean for like the tier list being weird. I consider Cramorant an A tier Pokemon. When played well, it is still strong. You have good laning, Hurricane knockup is nasty, Surf damage is really strong. If you can like catch two people with Hurricane Surf, that's half their health, and then like that's a setup for a team fight, and it's really good. But the problem is, the game is about 5-man unites on both sides at Zapdos, and Cramorant lost too much Zapdos to keep up with all the overtuned healing and shielding that's been added into the game, and also just the 5-man Death Ball that's become a mandatory thing at Zapdos and Pokemon Unite, and also the other damage nerfs kind of make it hard to keep in, so it's not really worth playing Cramorant. There's nothing satisfying about playing Cramorant compared to all the other OPs, so ideally, you want to have the game where like all the Pokemon fall between broken and okay. And that's like the weird thing. Pokemon Unite is such a crazy high action game that if Pokemon is considered balanced, it's effectively a bad Pokemon. And I don't have anything against that. It's just that I actually like it when things are crazy, like early League of Legends, Season 1, Season 2, where everything was busted, but then everyone's having fun. Early Pokemon Unite, when it felt more balanced. Everything was broken, or like most of the roster was really, really strong. Beta Pokemon Unite was wild. Garchomp was stronger. Pikachu was stronger. Snorlax could 1v2, 1v3 if it had 2 levels on you, and Crustle was also just ridiculous. Now, Crustle needed a nerf. Like, Crustle was too crazy for beta Pokemon Unite, but I liked it when like everything was satisfying and nuts. And now it's just like, nope, some Pokemon are arbitrarily bad. Cramorant gets 3 nerfs, and then Serena launches. And then Serena doesn't get any meaningful nerfs. There was also weird things like Snorlax just randomly getting a heavy slam nerf. But that's kind of like the damage that made it competitive in some situations, and then like just a little bit of nerfs to Snorlax and then power creep around in some meta shifts. Now Snorlax just not good enough or not worth playing to feel any kind of like satisfaction out of the game. Let's keep on going with some of this. Like, yeah, Cramorant just went from like a strong Pokemon when played well is really good. Like, yeah, I put an S tier. Like, if you main Cramorant and you land everything, not a lot the opponent can do. But that's the thing, like, that's the point about being a mage, but it seems like the devs hate mages unless you're Gardevoir because of the body pillow situation, and then you have to be a melee to keep up or else the game is unsatisfying. Lucario, close combat, overbuffed, that's become apparent now. Who needs like extreme speed resets and skill cap expression where everything in the game as Lucario gets onto close combats, you don't really have enough ability to get out of it, especially with Slow Smoke. Slow Smoke also creating a lot of problems in the game. I expect that to be fixed with the next balance update, but it kind of shows like something breaks. 90% of the changes in the patch look good, but the other 10% just ruin the entire game. So yeah, it's like Lucario went from, hey, might finally be balanced to, oh wait, never mind, the devs have no idea what they're doing, close combat's too strong because of the incentivization off of Bone Rush, because Bone Rush was really good. Similar to Zeraora. Like, okay, Discharge just needed a nerf from the beginning, and Zeraora was always way too strong, but then they were like stealth buffing, not even stealth, they were like just buffing. Wild Charge every time, like, hey, don't pick Discharge, Wild Charge is good. Hey, don't pick Discharge, Wild Charge is good. Oh, wait, okay, fine, you're not picking Discharge, we're nerfing Discharge, oh, Wild Charge is too strong. And that just kind of brings in the more problems, like, okay, untargetability, invincibility, on a high damage, like a bruisery, not even bruiser, but like an all-rounder kind of Pokemon, melee, fighter, he's a fighter. He's like a fighter Pokemon, just gets that much untargetability because it's dealing damage, and there's nothing you can do about it, and it's a lot of damage, and it just lasts for way too long. Like, I would actually prefer if Wild Charge did all of its damage sooner, and then Zeraora wasn't as untargetable as long, but then, like, yeah, Zeraora just eats CC, and then just does Wild Charge, and there's nothing you can do about it. So even if you get the right engage, even if you do everything right onto Zeraora, nah, you actually end up in the losing situation on that. Same thing for Lucario. You collapse on Lucario, well, now you're in sweet spot to eat a full close combat and then get like extreme speed reset on and maybe even like a Unite move, but also because of all that mobility and the unstoppability during, like, you can't cancel close combat. Normally, if something is channeled, you can just stun the Pokemon and it doesn't get the benefits. No, the unstoppability in close combat means it's just going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. And then Lucario can use that to absorb CC, be better than Machamp, and then you can't counterplay it. Lucario is just going to do anything at once after that, before, during, and after. I don't know. What are some other Pokemon that are like kind of doing some weird stuff? Cinderace is broken, but this is what I mean by good broken. I consider Cinderace the best AD carry type Pokemon in the game right now, but you can get onto Cinderace at some point. You can shield absorb through it with like buddy barriers. You can chase it down. You can at least remove it from the fight long enough to where it, like, the Cinderace's team can then be stopped instead of just like, oh, everyone's mashing around and then like Cinderace is just free hitting the team. Cinderace doesn't get too much of a free lunch right now because of the feint nerfs, because of all the power creep and stuff. So like, you have to play very well on Cinderace, but sometimes like perfect kiting, perfect play is not enough because of all the other like broken, unacceptable things inside the game. Like, Charizard just Unite moves the Cinderace, or like Unite moves a teammate and then flies over Cinderace and then just out DPS a Cinderace. Cinderace can throw a Unite move, but it's not going to be enough to make up for it. And then, like, that's it. So, like, yeah, and even then, like, there's oppressive Cinderaces, but Cinderace can't 1v5. Cinderace cannot just do whatever it wants. So that's what I mean, that's healthy. It's strong, it's an AD carry, it can pop off and win the game because that's what late game AD carries are about, but it has that balance, and like, yeah, you play around it properly and you can shut it down because that's what, there's counterplay to Cinderace. That's like my long-winded way of saying there's counterplay to Cinderace, but the concept of counterplay is so foreign in some situations that kind of needs to be re-explained, I guess. I don't know. Oh yeah, Sarina's unacceptable. Just everything in the kit is overtuned. Everything looks like a new League of Legends champion, to where it's like, some characters get one thing in its kit, maybe two. Serena gets the whole kitchen sink, and then the kitchen, the house, everything, dude. It's not even the neighbor's house, the county. Everything belongs to Serena. It gets healing, it gets mobility, it gets shielding, it gets resets, and also has crazy damage. So Serena hasn't been nerfed enough, and melee Pokemon are just way too strong because, like, yeah, I get the idea where it's like, oh man, a major range thing out kites you. Well, that's the point. Fighters are supposed to have vulnerability. Bruisers are supposed to have some exploitability. Tanks are supposed to have exploitability. And that just doesn't happen because the kits are so overloaded with nonsense to either eat too much damage or ignore too much damage or walk through crowd control. So there's no counterplay. Yeah, Cinderace is like good broken. So after that we have like Sylveon. Sylveon's okay. With all the power creep, like, man, I wish Sylveon had more damage now. It's like Sylveon just can't chew through all the shields, chew through all the supporting, and chew through all the healing and lack of counterplay. I'm sounding like a broken record, but again, that's like, there's that many problems with the game. It's kind of dumb. But it's like, okay, Sylveon can probably just exist as is. We nerf the top end, buff the bottom end, and Sylveon's playable and stays playable, and that's pretty fine. Pikachu. Pikachu is a mix of like okay and balanced. Like, yeah, Pikachu got stronger, and a lot of people are like having issues with Pikachu, but when I was playing my friend, it was kind of like really apparent where it's like Pikachu just didn't do as much as any other character that it was going up against. And even if like you land your abilities, you get your crowd control, you get the follow-up, there was just too much safety, too much unstoppability, or Garchomp lands a Moonblast and a Psyshock right back, and oh, never mind, Pikachu lost that trade. Weird. Now Pikachu is quick to hit and stuff, but like, yeah, like some Pokemon are just allowed to do things better than others, even though they kind of have the same class, and there's no real reason for it. So that's why I have like balance. Like, if Pokemon's balanced, that's bad in this situation. And it's kind of like that difference between like okay tier and balance and like stuff. Like, if Pikachu doesn't have Unite move, it effectively isn't a Pokemon, but it gets its Unite move a lot, and Unite moves are just broken in general. But that doesn't like put the character in an okay state. It makes it feel balanced, which kind of bad, especially when Gardevoir, that's an unacceptable Pokemon right now. The base movement speed of Gardevoir is so weird that it just like outruns some abilities, and then it can kite forever on Moonblast stun, and then it lands Psyshock or Future Sight, and just too much damage from too much safety. Yeah, then it has like one of the best Unite moves in the game. So I can understand the level 9 change because like it took too long to scale and you got too far behind, but now Gardevoir's floor is not low enough, and its reward is way too high for also, the ceiling's kind of high, but then Gardevoir falls into the same problem as Talonflame. Gardevoir needs to be A tier. Gardevoir needs to be strong, but only if you can land most of your abilities most of the time. And if you have someone that's like super proficient at landing most of their abilities most of the time, then it's just way too strong. And if you want to play super annoying, super lame, then there's somehow a lack of counterplay to a Pokemon that should be a very squishy, diveable thing, and it isn't. I think I was warning about this back in like November in one of my tier lists where I'm like, look, a lot of people want me to put Gardevoir at like S tier. It's A tier, A plus at best, because you can never play with like 100% accuracy on such a weird skill shot based Pokemon, but even playing at 80% makes it strong, and if you enable it to have more power than that, it's unacceptable. Like, the Pokemon either has to be strong or way too broken, and now Gardevoir landed in way too broken. Cool. Similar to Talonflame, similar to Venusaur, that we saw like, oh, if Venusaur has too much speed, then, which is also like just one of the best stats in a MOBA or any kind of like arena fighter kind of game, where it's like, yeah, movement speed, nothing can catch you, and you can just dance around everything forever. Or you can like Venusaur used to be able to just engage, soak a lot of damage, do a lot of damage, get out, no punishment whatsoever. So lack of punishment was annoying. Still kind of has that. But also, if it's getting too much damage reduction, and then like it just has like a weird, almost broken third auto attack, the way that crowd control lands on some Pokemon, or just gets used in some situation, like, yeah, then it's not healthy. But now we can see that Venusaur has gotten out-crapped, kind of gotten nerfed down to where the Pokemon is just either way too annoying, or doesn't really get to do too much, and then it doesn't do as much with the lead as it used to, and that's kind of bad when the rest of the roster is just so stupid. Let's talk about this like broken as a non-functioning kind of tier that I don't consider like Greedent unacceptable or Wigglytuff unacceptable. They exploit a couple of game systems in a very specific way at very specific times to where they're either useless or they created a problem that can't really be dealt with in that specific match, in that specific game state. It's not like, oh, all the time something's wrong here. It's like Greedent, the problem with Greedent is that it never falls behind enough for making mistakes. Like, Greedent can ignore everything, go into the enemy jungle, fail the invade, like not even get any steals, maybe even get KO'd, and then still claw back into the game because the comeback mechanics are too nuts, and there's just so little counterplay to its kit. It can either covet away for free and then like run you around the map, or it can stuff cheeks, run away for free, and then run you around the map. So Greedent is just like the ultimate waste of time, but somehow creates an advantage out of that. Or just like cross maps you, because like you give up on it, it cross maps you, and then it scores some points, so it gains a little bit back. It's actually like comparable to the top smite situation in League of Legends right now, but that is not healthy. The devs have immediately been like, yeah, we need to stop this from happening because it's just an abomination to what this competitive game is supposed to hold, and that's Greedent. But at the same time, Greedent's one of those things like, you ignore it, and there's only so much it can do. And to a degree, if you ignore it, you're going to win more games than you lose against the Greedent, but then just like sometimes things just break down weird. Or against like lesser players that'll chase around the Greedent. Greedent isn't losing from running away, you're losing from chasing it more, even though it shouldn't be that case. Like, Greedent just has no punishment whatsoever, and then it comes out ahead in very obscure ways that's like, I don't get it. But at the same time, like, I still don't consider it a good Pokemon. Can United Zapdos and then just ruin the game or have a chance of getting a steal because it's just too safe of a Pokemon. And it doesn't have that reliability, but at some point it's like, oh, Greedent did the thing, and now we might be screwed. Same thing for Wigglytuff. Like, the only thing holding up Wigglytuff is Buddy Barrier synergizing with its Unite move and Cute Charm. I don't care. Like, I look at Sing and I'm like, that is actually perfectly acceptable for this game and what a tank or support should be doing. Like, that's fine. Dazzling Gleam, that's also kind of fine. Problem is, like, Cute Charm is just so inconsistent and weird, where it's like, it just randomly cancels abilities that shouldn't be canceled. Like, if a Wigglytuff is around, your abilities, it's like, wait, Cute Charm is down. Why didn't this ability go off? I don't think it was canceled by the sleep. Like, things just, jank stuff happens around Wigglytuff. Also, the sleep is kind of broken in that it has a minimum duration and then like a maximum duration. It feels like the minimum isn't being met enough even after the nerf that happened a couple months ago. So like the game, the Pokemon just non-functioning broken. Not strong broken, but like there's a problem here. Not working broken. And then like, yeah, Cute Charm just like cancels abilities somehow. Like the ability should be able to like finish and then Cute Charm activates, and then now you're kind of like stuck there with your decisions, but instead it doesn't happen that way. And also Buddy Barrier needs a nerf and is overtuned, so when Wigglytuff unites with Buddy Barrier and just gives the team unstoppability at Zapdos in the 5-man Death Ball, there's no counterplay to it. You don't get to throw in enough crowd control to knock off the Buddy Barriers or make the Cinderace vulnerable or open up like something on their carry Pokemon. It just happens. However, if Buddy Barrier wasn't as strong and you weren't getting like 20 Buddy Barriers stacking on the carry Pokemon or like turning around and engage or something, then you're not feeling as much impact from Wigglytuff, so it's completely useless. So yeah, it's like, Wigglytuff for the most part, not very much of an overwhelming Pokemon, but because Zapdos is too important and Buddy Barrier is too broken and Cute Charm is just physically or literally broken, it kind of just creates problems in certain situations where it's like, oh, yeah, that's not cool. So there's too much not cool stuff, but it's not unacceptable as a Pokemon. Or like as a kit or something. It just doesn't work. So then we have Decidueye, unplayable, especially when we got Pokemon like Greninja. Greninja's okay. Greninja's strong. Greninja, it's an alternative to Cinderace. It can perform better in some situations, but I think Cinderace is just the more solid, higher DPS, higher ADC kind of pick. But as long as you're not going Water Shuriken, yeah, Greninja can change game outcomes and is a satisfying Pokemon to play at effectively all stages for the reward that you get for getting a late game hyper carry ADC kind of Pokemon. So, but then like Decidueye, we have the nonsense of like Sylveon launch, we have the nonsense of Blastoise launch. All the other Pokemon that like launched around Decidueye were ridiculous, and then Decidueye just sucks, and then it just gets to stay suck, and then there's all these other problems. So it's like when you have fighters and bruisers that have so little counterplay or just so overtuned, it makes mages and AD carries and like squishy carries unplayable. So Decidueye is kind of getting the worst of that in all kinds of ways. Same thing on Absol. Absol is just no point playing it because there's better speedsters, there's better jungles, and you can't do anything at Zapdos. You ult into a fight or you try to dive into someone, and then a million Buddy Bears are popping, and you don't get to do anything. Like, Absol has zero impact and just dies because it's too squishy and doesn't have enough like crowd control or proper damage, and you can't really select any target that you need to in the 5-man Death Ball because it just doesn't work. Now, one thing I feel like could save Absol is that if its Unite move just evaporated shields. Because one thing, again, learning from League of Legends. It's like the devs, instead of learning from League of Legends and Riot Games, making mistakes that ruined the game for half a decade, like seasons 4 through 9, pretty much unplayable for League of Legends. Now we're coming out of that crater. I feel like League of Legends getting in a better spot. not as good as it was at its peak in like Season 2, but getting there. And one thing Riot realized lately is that shields are abusive. There's too much shielding in the game, and it's creating a lot of unhealthy game states from like support spam or itemization and stuff like that. So they've added some abilities that break shields or some interactions, and then items that break shields. That niche doesn't exist in Pokemon Unite. Buddy Bearer is too strong, Unite shielding too strong. That's a problem. So I feel like Absol, if its Unite move, like its Unite move should either do 3 times damage to shields. That way, like there's a Buddy Barrier, Death Ball, everyone's popping off kind of thing. It uses its Unite move, it's untargetable, and then it's like stripping shields away, and it's evening out the fight. And that makes it to where like, okay, Buddy Bearer is still like 100% pick kind of thing, but now it's a liability if they have an Absol. So I think like Absol needs something like that. Absol needs to provide a very specific niche counterplay that can make it meta at any point and put risk on the enemy team. But until then, it's just useless. It does nothing after 5 minutes, no matter how lucky it was. And because Zapdos is broken, Absol just loses. And like split pushing isn't worth it because tier 2 goals are too strong. So Absol tries to split into a tier 2 goal. It either gets out tanked or a buddy shows up off the launch pad and Absol is just useless. Doesn't do anything. Slowbro, unplayable. You can ignore it in team fights, and that's it. Like, you ignore it. The worst thing Slowbro can do is make the game a 4v4. And it can, like, surf knock up a couple people and, like, keep them trapped in there, but a lot of unstoppability and a lot of, like, shields in the game, and Slowbro doesn't do anything. So, yeah, like, you ignore it, you win games. Trevenant's a little not as bad. Like, when Trevenant launched, it felt really strong, and then I had the epiphany. No, Trevenant's just balanced. That's bad in this game, so whatever, but it gets to do more. Better Unite move, can lock people out for like 5 seconds. Kind of tricky to play, but when there's just so much, like, why play Trevenant when you just pick one of the Giga OPs and you're fine? So like, yeah, Trevenant, I think like if unplayable Pokemon get buffed and it can like open up some counterplay there, and then just everything up here gets gutted, yeah, then everything's balanced and feeling good. Same thing on Machamp. Machamp is like balanced to bad, but almost unplayable just because Garchomp exists. Like, Machamp needs physical vamp. If Machamp does not have physical vamp, it cannot compete with Garchomp because Garchomp's healing is way too strong. So what does Machamp do? It like submissions and yoinks someone. Well, Garchomp, if you're running the Dragon build, also if you ever pick round, just uninstall immediately. You have no game sense and you're not benefiting anyone. If you go Dragon build and you scoop someone with it, or you scoop multiple with it, congratulations, you're doing the same thing as Machamp, but now you have more DPS, more sustain. You're just better in every way. And then your Unite move on Garchomp is just better than Machamp's. Like, Machamp's, you can round up a lot of people, you can do a lot of damage, but then there's unstoppability, but then there's just like Buddy Bears and stuff, and after your Unite move ends, you are not a Pokemon. Garchomp can actually keep dueling through all of that stuff, healing through it, and then potentially winning fights. So Machamp becomes like an 80 caster that gets Vamp off of it, and becomes like, oh, if I'm casting my close combat, I'm using my abilities, then I'm like Garchomp, it'll be good. But until then, no reason picking it, really, and it's pretty sad. Ninetales is balanced, but it used to have like its own niche. I'm like, yo, I'm a caster attack, like basic attack carry that provides crazy amounts of crowd control. If you get onto me, I can't really do anything. But then like Gardevoir just does more damage with still some CC at better range. So kind of removes the niche right there. And everything else just kind of like ignores crowd control or gets in on Ninetales now. And then Ninetales is useless. Like Charizard uses its Unite move. Ninetales is got nothing. Ninetales is just like, well, I guess I'll die. And the zone of influence for Ninetales also kind of like shrinks a bit with all the power creep that's been going on. And it's like, it's balanced, it's good. Maybe it needs a buff, but I don't see a buff like saving it in the current game state. But if the game doesn't have as much nonsense in it, then Ninetales just functions. Also, I've been saying this, like, Ninetales seems like an artifact of alpha, to where like Dazzling Gleam doesn't come out right, and its ability queuing and casting is not smooth as some of the other Pokemon, so it's just clunky. You fix up the clunk, and then you also take out some of the power creep, which I don't even know how you do at this point if the game's already power creeping, and then it'll be good. But until then, it's balanced, which means it's bad. Same thing for Snorlax. I don't understand the heavy slam nerf. I don't know why they immediately nerfed Snorlax and then just started putting in stronger Pokemon into the game. So Beta Snorlax used to get away with a lot. Current Snorlax doesn't get away with as much. Blastoise is balanced, if not okay, but it's early. Like, its landing isn't as good as Mamoswine, so it's like, yeah, Blastoise, it can surf and it can Hydro Pump, but you don't get as much reward. It makes me like, remember when Blastoise launched and the game sucked? It was actually in a better state than it is now. Wacky. Even after like the first Blastoise nerf, and Blastoise was still strong, it's like, oh, I would actually like that right now, because you get a good Surf Hydro Pump into Unite move, you can actually have an impact on the game, but then in this current game state, you don't really get as much for that, so you're better off picking like Serena or Charizard or Talonflame. Give up the tank and just win the game, because there's so little counterplay around the other Pokemon. Because like, yeah, if you think about it, Pokemon like Ninetales were stronger, Pokemon like Absol were stronger, or like Decidueye or something, like Blastoise getting back there, messing people up, or like pushing a Venusaur out of the fight, that has more impact. But now it's like you can't really get away with any of that stuff. Diving to lock out a carry does not work, and it's actually the losing play in a lot of situations, and that means Blastoise doesn't have a niche, and everything out damages it now at Zapdos because of the Unite move nerf and power creep, so what's it gonna do? Mr. Mime's broken, but only in like very high skill cap, high skill ceiling main situations. Like, people have solved Mr. Mime, congratulations, you earn it. You have earned the most broken Pokemon in the game. But it's kind of niche, and again, it's earned, so I think that's what makes it acceptable. And the thing is, like, there's not as much skill cap here. It's very easy to abuse on Talonflame, where you fly in, flame charge out, and just be annoying. Like, if you want to be lame and annoying, these Pokemon enable it to a disgusting, game-ruining degree. Mr. Mime, he has to earn that, and that's what makes it okay. Crustal's okay. I don't know what happened. Power creep. Because, like, the thing is, you X-Scissor 3... Again, if you pick Rock Tomb or Stealth Rocks Crustal, uninstall the game. You're making everyone else have a better time by doing so. Same thing on Score Shield. Somehow will actually probably help the game. Like, a person quitting and then making less people hate the game will just preserve the game's longevity. So please do that if you're not running X-Scissor Shell Smash. But the thing is, even if you go X-Scissor Shell Smash now, you can get the perfect X-Scissor on like a Lucario or Zeraora or Charizard or Talonflame, and there's no reward. They survive it, and then they either fly away, close combat you and get all their health back, wild charge and then like ruin your team on the collapse, or then Charizard just gets to use its Unite move and now it's set up. So perfect engages from tanks or crowd control just don't work in Pokemon Unite, because everything's just too disgusting and too overtuned. Or like you catch out their carry, but then 20 Buddy Bearers are coming their way, they get to use their Unite move, kite out, and even though the advantage should go to the properly engaging team, that just doesn't happen in Pokemon Unite because there's so many problems with the game. And I feel like even with this tier list, I'm not identifying all of them. Like, I can probably go into a game, play, or like, not a game, but go into Pokemon Unite, play for a couple hours, get a couple dozen games, and be like, oh, that's a thing. Because I'm just saying like, oh, unstoppability, untargetability, and too much healing and shielding is a problem. But it just doesn't feel as tangible as it does when you play the game. You're like, yeah, that needs to be stopped. Gengar is okay, which is good after the changes. Blissey is okay. Eldegoss is broken. And in my tier list, I've kind of had it reversed because, like, I feel if Blissey uses its Unite move in the right situation, the game's just over. Like, if you use it on a Cinderace and then Cinderace survives the onslaught and it's just like Blissey and Cinderace versus 4 and cooldowns are still like cycling through, Cinderace picks it up. Or even like Greninja or Decidueye or Garchomp, or you Blissey with an OP and then you kind of win the game. But at the same time, proper Eldegoss play just negates all that, because Eldegoss uses its shield on 4 people plus itself. That's 6,000 health. Nothing Blissey does is going to give 6,000 effective health. And that's before Eldegoss uses its Unite move, or its Speed Boost, again, speed being the most valuable stat in a game like this. Or even if it goes Pollen Puff, if it AoEs Pollen Puff with the Diver, that's kind of like a Soft Boiled, maybe a Soft Boiled and a half, or like the effective shielding from the Safeguard. And also, but then like Blissey kind of contributes to the unstoppability problem and whatnot. And again, Slow Smoke is just really unacceptable when certain Pokemon go in, Slow Smoke, the counterplay starts to fade away. But overall, like, yeah, Eldegoss is broken. Can't disincentivize it. We saw the Cotton Spore get buffed. That doesn't matter. We've seen some other things get nerfed, like the Leaf Tornado or whatever gives the speed boost. That that didn't stop it. So when you're when you're buffing other things and it's not disincentivizing, that means the thing that you're trying to disincentivize needed a nerf. And then there's going to be other problems that come from that, and then the game is unbalanced. Yeah, Eldegoss, it's contributing to the problems, but that's also Buddy Barrier. Nerf Buddy Barrier, things maybe feel better. Introduce an item or a Pokemon or some abilities that affect shields a bit more, and then the game's going to feel better. But until then, nah, which leaves us with Dragonite. I find Dragonite to be bad for the game in specific ways, like Wigglytuff, to where it's like, yeah, Hyper Beam with Pokemon Unite and like the mobile latency, but also like the Hyper Beam damage is kind of being the best secure, but also having a wind up. It's not like Smite. Smite rewards that instant, I got it at the right time, or like an instantly going off ability feels good. With Dragonite, predicting for the Hyper Beam secure, and even if there's like 2 Dragonites in the game, so Dragonite v Dragonite trying to like steal a Dreadnought or Zapdos game secure from each other, it doesn't feel like it's rewarding skilled play. It's just RNG, throw it out at roughly the right time, something happens, Dragonite wins. And the thing is, when you think about Unite moves, they're supposed to have like impact in the game. Dragonite, in that lack of counterplay kind of way, its best option is to Unite out of the fight and score. I don't consider that like the strongest thing ever, because if Dragonite does that and it has like a Buddy Barrier and it's trying to score and it's got a score shield, it can still be bursted through when it's trying to score like 100 at the end game. But it still just like kind of creates problems where it's like, oh, Dragonite was scoring top and then leaps into the Zapdos fight and steals it with Hyper Beam. That shouldn't happen. I think that overinflates what Dragonite is, because I'm not like, oh, because it can do that sometimes to secure a game, I'm putting it in like broken most OP Pokemon right now. Dragonite's good, but then if it finds that golden moment to do the very disruptive, unhealthy gameplay thing sometimes, well then it's just BS. So it's a mix of like broken and how that works, but also just unacceptable that that's even a thing to begin with. And also for like Dragonite being slightly ahead gets too much off of that Hyper Beam, because there's no way of getting back in with Dreadnought. There's no way of getting back in or trying to like get that comeback fight or like that clutch Zapdos secure to bring the game back. Nah, Dragonite exists and just negates too much advantage for just existing on too little compared to the rest of the roster and compared to how the game feels like it should be played. But remember, the devs, they want this. They're blown away by the strategies, and they're happy that, you know, people are just ruining the integrity by removing skill and abusing like non-counterplayable things and just making the game more frustrating for everyone. So I hope this kind of breaks it down. Like I said, I don't think I hit all the points because I could play the game and I could have people comment and I'd realize I missed a couple of things, but overall it's like, yeah, just like there's BS in the game for the sake of BS, like what Dragonite can do, like just Sarena's Kit, Talonflame not getting nerfed enough, like. And then there's just a lot of Pokemon that aren't satisfying to play. Like, you make these playable, you nerf the dumb thing about these Pokemon, and then everyone's still feeling pretty strong, and the game's pretty good. And I guess that's just where we're at right now. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.